So, oh, thank you, Evan.
Sorry.
Okay, yeah, no, I completely forgot about that. Thank you. Okay, so the aim of our study was to try to understand how to better equip business English teachers with knowledge of BELF, how to bring these principles into their classrooms, of course, with the goal of improving our students' communication skills, because after all, that's what we do. As Evan said, this was done by Lucas and myself with your help, with your participation. Something we noticed in the survey and the interviews was that a couple of people were mentioning their struggles with the concept of BELF. And it's a very hard definition, yes, but this is a very well-known one, and I think it's relevant to start by that. If we consider that ELF is people using English, people from different mother tongues, different backgrounds, using English to communicate, BELF differs from that in three major characteristics, let's say. According to Ken Caranta and Lohjala Salminen, they talk about the domain of use, so we're talking about people using English to do business. We also we're talking about BELF users as professionals using English. So it's not K-12 students, it's not people playing games online, it's not people traveling for leisure. And finally, the overall goal of the interaction is to get the job done and create rapport. Something that is also very important to mention is that initially these authors who coined the term BELF, they said, okay, so we have business English as a lingua franca. Later on, they said that the acronym actually stands for English as a business lingua franca. And they explained that this change happened because their focus was not on business English. It was on English being used with the purpose of doing business. Some additional information we think you should know. If you are a teacher, if you're not a researcher, you might have the impression that BELF is something new. In fact, it is not. As a field of study, BELF has been examined for about 20 years, so nothing new. In addition to the things I said before about the characteristics of BELF, BELF also requires clarity of meaning, strategies to ensure understanding, and the use of accommodation practices. So authors explain that BELF is this communication which is fluid, real-time negotiated, of course, between people of different backgrounds, different first languages. It does not necessarily abide by native standards. It's improvised. Nevertheless, it works. So if we consider that not only BELF, but not only English for the purpose of business, but the English language in general is changing, do you agree with us that the way we should teach and learn English should also change? It should also follow. But of course, that stands the question, how do we do that? And you might feel that these pedagogical challenges BELF brings resonate with you, because they certainly resonate with me as a teacher. So considering the things I said before, how do we address this real-time, non-standard use of the language if it does not follow codified standards? So, okay, what do I bring into the classroom? And how do we address the linguocultural competence involved in these interactions? Because we're not only talking about geographical differences. We're not talking about Norway versus Mexico in terms of culture. We're talking about culture within companies. So at a department level, it's different from the big corporate level. A huge problem I myself have, how to assess BELF. Professor Tone gave us a wonderful talk about that. Unfortunately, we could not record it, but this poses a real challenge. how do we evaluate our learners and BELF users if the focus of BELF interactions is, as I said, getting the job done, building rapport. It's not really about the linguistic performance itself. And of course, how can we teachers be educated to address each of these things that I'm bringing you? And here I'd like to share a particular pain of mine. Brazilians, I am Brazilian and I teach Brazilian students. So something that always comes to me is like, okay, getting the job done. But in Brazil, the overall proficiency level is very low. So we're talking about 5% of the population being considered fluent, okay? And I'm using quotation marks because, of course, it's the idea of fluency varies. Okay, we're not getting there. But anyways, if we consider that the overall population has a low proficiency level, how do they get the job done? And that impacts every decision I make in terms of content. So every time I'm preparing a class, it's always like, what should I prioritize? Because they need to speak fast. So we're talking about CFO with an A2 level of English. So what do I do? And I really would love to see some research to back me up on these decisions. But as far as I know, there isn't research on that in Brazil. Or maybe there is, but I don't know because it's in the academy. So this is called the research practice divide, this distance between what is produced in terms of research versus what we can actually bring into our classrooms. And this concept is important. You'll see in a couple of minutes. So about that, we have found research studying the impact of research, of course, on practitioners, on people like us, teachers. And we have found some studies suggesting ways to bridge this research practice divide. However, there has been little investigation into this divide in the context of business English, considering that our learners are, as I said before, professionals. They're not K-12 students. They're not travelers, etc., etc. Specifically talking about BELF, literature has considered BELF pedagogy and the impact on learners. But we are lacking research talking about our perspective, business English teachers, and the impact of BELF research on our teaching practices. Also, there are two more levels here. First, how do we translate the research findings into something we can use on Monday? And also, as I said, many business English teachers, and myself included, don't have access to academic journals. So again, something may be produced, but I don't know, we don't have access to that. And that's why, maybe it's not clear, but that's why we started the conversations about BELF. The idea of this group was to bridge this research practitioner divide by bringing researchers to talk to you, to bring a research that maybe you don't know it exists, and help you use that in the classroom. As you know, this is a volunteer initiative which started in 2022, and we would like to know if it has been useful, if it has been relevant to our community. That's why we did this research. So we wanted to address the impact of this research on you, and that's how we came up with 3 research questions. The first question focuses on understanding how this group has contributed to your understanding of BELF and how it's and its pedagogical implications. Question 2 is about understanding how BELF research impacted your classroom practices? And question 3 was to understand how your students have benefited from it. So how did we do that? We had the 2 phases. As I mentioned before, we had a survey, and the survey was our method of collecting quantitative data. After we had the results of the survey, we ran it through RASH and a statistical analysis, and that gave us input to come up with an interview script, which started phase 2. We interviewed a couple of you, and with these results, we ran thematic analysis. The results of this helped us explain the quantitative data we had collected. So just as a curiosity, we had 57 people responding the survey from 21 different countries, and 10 people were interviewed from 7 different countries. We would have loved to interview every single one of our members, but unfortunately we had some time constraints. So, as I said, we had data from the survey, and then we had data from the interviews, and Lucas and I separately came up with 15 codes. So these were recurrent mentions that that came up in the survey or the interview. For example, we had 45 instances of benefits of the sessions to the teachers. That made us very happy. We appreciate your appreciation. But we also had some mentions about the struggles with the sessions, struggles with the learners. And we also had, and something else that made us happy was mentions to the relevance of the community we are fostering here, which made us all very thrilled, because one of our goals was to actually fostering a community where we could help one another. After these 15 codes, we narrowed them down to 4 qualitative themes, as you can see here: the difficulties of BELF-informed teaching, struggles with the sessions, with the concept or self-identity, benefits derived from attending the sessions and or having BELF knowledge, and unanimous calls for practical solutions training and materials. But I'm going to tell you a bit more about each question now. So remember, the first question was trying to understand how the sessions have helped you understand BELF. And the overall results show that it was to a fairly high degree, as you can see here, 4.78, the maximum was 6. So in green here, have the sessions helped you with theoretical information or knowledge about BELF? So we had a 4.85 average, and in blue, have the sessions helped you apply or develop BELF principles in your classes? Slightly low, 4.71, but still high. A bit more about this. So as I said, unanimous calls for practice. Everybody said, yeah, we should perhaps focus more on the links between research and how to apply it. Some quotes here, people say, yeah, it's too much theory. We could work on case studies. We could maybe share practical teaching materials. Some nuances about this question. For example, as you saw in the codes, lots of people mentioned the contexts are different. So people say, okay, but I work in Japan, I work in China, I work in Nigeria, I work in Malaysia, whatever. So my context is different. Yes, okay. Some mentions to the identity as non-expert. So a couple of people mentioned that sometimes they struggle with the concepts or with the sessions. Like sometimes I feel that I'm not at the same level. This is one of my favorites. As I said, the concept is unclear. What would a BELF classroom look like? I don't have an answer for that. That's a very hard question. Actually, we are all trying to find out together here. Some mentions to the benefits of attending the group for personal growth. Like, I always try to implement BELF in my classes. The sessions have helped me grow personally and professionally. This one made me particularly happy. Validation. So when I first came across the concept of ELF, it kind of validated me first as a teacher first as an ELF user. So suddenly my English was good enough, because I have always had that imposter syndrome. Oh, my English is not good enough. I have a CPE saying that I am a proficient English speaker, but my English is never good enough. But suddenly I know ELF, and it validates me as a speaker. And then it validates me as a teacher. So the fact that people mention that knowing about BELF validates their teaching beliefs and validates them as teachers, to me was really impactful. Also, as I mentioned before, something that we as a group liked was mentions to this aspect of community that we are creating here. About question number 2, remember, it was about the impact on your classroom practices. So these were among the highest scores we had, and it is highlighted by the quote here. Like I always explain to my students, they're using English as a medium of communication to get the job done. I focus on communication strategies. Do you remember? It was something that I mentioned before that BELF communication requires. And this one, it's also something I particularly liked, which was depending on our context, we might struggle to convince stakeholders about the relevance of a BELF-oriented syllabus or approach. But this one says that they're using BELF explicitly in their syllabuses. And so this is very nice. About question number 3, that was the impact on the learners. This was the lowest score we had. So in the survey, the responses were kind of mixed. And the interviews, the responses were kind of mixed. So they suggested that there is a positive reception from the learner's perspective, but the impact on learners has been inconsistent, as these quotes highlight here. Well, I'm not sure the sessions actually impacted them. They understand if you need to communicate, it's not necessary to have perfect English, but at the same time, they want to achieve that native-like competence. Yes. So what do we think that may explain that this score was that as teachers, we are very good at self-reporting our perspectives and our understanding, but we might not have the tools to examine our learners' knowledge of BELF, for example. Also, as you could see in the quotes, there is this tension, of course, in every single class, every single context which people bring ELF, there is this tension. The standard English versus the English we actually use. As you can see here, yeah, I had to decide whether to teach standard English or make it more ELF-oriented. Or this one, which is particularly, they might understand it, but they won't accept it. Yeah, so that does happen. And we think this resonates with what Cancarenta says, what Cancarenta calls the linguistic manifestations of English in international business. This is a very nice name to call this continuum that she explains. Okay, when you're representing the company, when you're speaking on behalf of your company, producing, for example, official communication, you must abide by some standard rules of the language, because of course it can impact the company. But when you're using English to get the job done, to talk to your peers, your boss, whatever, you use a BELF. So she calls that a continuum. Also, this issue this issue relates to what I said about the calls for practical material. So our research has 4 implications. First, business English teachers require more practical training and materials, which bring BELF and which can actually help us on Mondays with content, with materials, etc. We would benefit from more research teacher partnerships such as this one, but not only like this one. It could be, for example, one of you guys thinks, oh, you know, I really would like to research this in more depth with someone, but I'm not a researcher. So you could get in touch with a researcher and set some partnerships. And this would benefit the community as well. We need more access to research. So as I said before, maybe there is research, but I don't know why, because it's behind paywalls, or it's because it's in the academia. And even this was interesting. Some people mentioned that the jargon impacts their understanding of research. So in our sessions, for example, we always bring a paper. But if you're not used to reading a paper, then that might not reach you because you can't understand it. And finally, an attitudinal change would also be beneficial. Some researchers have this, I am doing the research, so I have the answers. You just follow what I'm saying. A two-way dialogue would be more relevant and mutually beneficial because, after all, people are after the same goals. So our conclusion is, as I said at the beginning, we wanted to determine the relevance of BELF to your teaching practices. The result is that there is a positive effect on the understanding of BELF, but the nuances suggest that teachers need more practical examples of how to apply BELF into their teaching contexts. So I hope you have understood that you people, our members, helped us come up with the first study to examine the research-practitioner relationship in the context of business English teaching, focusing on BELF communication. And now Lucas is going to tell you very valuable tips on how to access research. Over to you, Lucas.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You killed it. Nice presentation. And thank everyone for listening to the research that we did with you. So what I just wanted to do is show how your ability to actually access research is not as difficult as maybe you think it is. I hope, you know, we have all these obstacles like paywalls and academia, but in fact, research is accessible. So I just wanted to offer some insights if you do want to access some research and use it for your practice. So the first thing I want to recommend is ResearchGate. And you can see they've got a great mission here. Our mission is to connect the world of science and make research open to all. And it's basically like a social networking site. So if you like a piece of research or recommend it, it starts feeding you other similar pieces of research. So you can sort of get a constant feed of things that you like. And so this is actually a screenshot from my feed because I do a lot of sort of looking at curriculums and looking at textbooks, and then here it is. It fed me this thing: conceptualization of culture and research methods and studies of language teaching materials. So I focus on business English and BELF materials, but this sort of fed me a more general but similar type of research. So that's kind of the beauty of it, is that once you start engaging with it, you start getting all these new articles and sort of a community and people connecting with the research. Next one. The other way to do it is to contact the author directly, right? And because in fact, researchers love to share their research, because otherwise, why would they do their research? And especially researchers who are doing research for pedagogical purposes, the whole point is to be in touch with practitioners. So if you do find a piece of research, you can't find it on ResearchGate, or it's not on, it's not open access or on Google Scholar, you can reach out to the researchers and most likely they would be happy to share it. But I did want to sort of delineate a better approach and maybe a less good approach, because actually, and I didn't put this here to be condescending, but I just think back on the first ways I contacted researchers, and I think I didn't do it right. Like, it was something I had to learn. So I just wanted to give a little insight into how to approach this. So I'll start with the no side. And it says, "Dear Professor, could you send me a copy of your article entitled BELF, 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 as I currently do not have access to research journals and cannot afford to pay the high premium." So that's okay, that's probably true, but that's not going to resonate with a researcher. What the researcher is going to think is, oh, you want like a freebie, and they're trying to benefit, just to get some research. So that's that's not what research will respond to. So turning to probably a better way to approach a research would be, "Dear Professor, could you send me a copy of your article entitled BELF, BELF, BELF? I'm a business English teacher in the South American context, and I believe your article will provide great insights into business English teaching. Further, I'm considering conducting some classroom-based research myself. Thank you for your consideration." That's going to resonate with a researcher, because first of all, you're showing interest in the research, right? Researchers are researchers, so they're interested in research. So if you show interest in the research, then they'll be interested in you. And it also kind of mentions potential collaboration, because a lot of research really do want to do research and practitioner partnerships, right? And even if it doesn't result in a collaboration, it does result in interesting conversation. And also it could be a possible citation. If someone does some research based on their paper, they might get a citation, which do matter to researchers, especially researchers toward the beginning of their careers who want to move up. They're going to need citations as a quantitative way of showing that their research has impact. And then the other thing I just wanted to show is, some publishers will publish some articles open access. And so I'm at a university called the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and we have deals with some publishers where everything we publish with those publishers will be open access. But other publishers, we don't have that deal with. So, for example, Taylor and Francis, we could publish open access, but it would cost $3,300 US per article, and that's usually outside of the budget of a PhD student or a researcher. But anyway, one of the things they do is, when you publish an article, you can see here that they gave me 50 free online copies. And I can just sort of share the link with whoever, and the copies can just sort of be extracted. Because really it's in everyone's interest to get the research shared. And I don't know. I mean, this is my article. It's quite technical. It might be a little boring for some of you, but it is BELF related, and I haven't shared any of the copies. So if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out. But the point is that all researchers will have access to their own articles, and they're probably going to be likely to share. So yeah, I just wanted to do a little bit of the gap bridging with you guys. Thank you.
I'm having a lot of fun here with your comments. Okay, so please do talk to Lucas to get access to his paper.